Blessed with jaw-dropping beauty, charming, colourful villages hugging to the cliffs over a rough and ready sea, it's no wonder visitors flock to the tiny hamlets of the Cinque Terre for the endless photo opportunities. But let's find out why the Cinque Terre is all the more beautiful and compelling when you linger beyond the photos and explore its traditions and culture. Do you dream of speaking Italian but feel stuck? I hear you. Whether you want to connect with your Italian heritage, a partner, or you want to live in Italy, finding the right tools to match your learning style is important. My friend Michelle from Intrepid Italian offers a practical approach to learning Italian with her unique 80-20 method, teaching you only what you need to know. As an adult learner herself with Italian heritage, she really knows how to bridge the gap between English and Italian. As Angela from Australia said, I put my inability to learn down to my senior stage of life, but with Intrepid Italian, it seems to just fit. To find out how Intrepid Italian can help you learn Italian and to claim an exclusive $20 coupon code that you can use on any of Michelle's online courses from beginner to intermediate, visit untolditaly.com/Italian or visit the link in the show notes. As a bonus, you'll also get a downloadable travel phrase guide absolutely free. So visit untolditaly.com/Italian to accelerate your Italian. Ciao friends, hope you're well and dreaming of Italy. It's now a few months since I was there and I'm starting to get some itchy feet. But due to family circumstances, it will be a while until I'm there. So I've moved into virtual Italia mode. And here in Australia where I live, we're lucky to have a wonderful Italian film festival each year, and it's just kicked off. Last week I saw the headline feature, which is called Diamanti, which follows the story of creative women working at a high-end costume design house in Rome in the 1970s. It's an aesthetically beautiful movie with interesting characters and an uplifting storyline. I find it hard to watch anything violent or scary these days, so it was the perfect movie for me and great for embedding some Italiano in my psyche. It's definitely one to check out if you can get it on streaming, but I have to say it was lovely to watch it in the cinema with a glass of Prosecco. Today's guest is a creative Italian woman who some of you have met before. If not, you'll want to dive back into the episodes about Liguria. They are all easily found on the Untold Italy app and delivered ad-free there for your listening pleasure. Enrica Monzani is a cook, food tour guide and author based in the city of Genoa, the capital of the Liguria region where the villages of the Cinque Terre are found. It's been a good long while since we chatted about this popular coastal area, so I thought let's hear from a local about what makes it special, breathtaking views aside. Bentornata, welcome back to the Untold Italy podcast, Enrica.
Ciao, Katy. Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure.
Oh, it's so exciting to have you back. It's been a little while, and here you are, beaming in from beautiful Genoa. But I was curious, it's heading out of summer there and things are cooling down. But did you have a nice summer and did you go anywhere lovely in Italy?
Yes, I had a lovely summer and every 11 years so far, I've been to Trentino Alto Adige. So I've been in the mountainside, also because I live on the seaside. So I need some green and some mountains and some trees and woods. Yes, I went to Trentino. Close to San Martino di Castrozza, which is on the borders with Veneto. And it's a very nice area of Trentino. We fall in love with that place.
Oh, it is very beautiful around there. I feel like you could get lost there for weeks and not see too many people and just feel like you're completely close to nature.
If you find the right place, yes. There is, unfortunately, over-tourism also in the mountainside, but there are still many hidden places or quieter places, such the one where I go, which is a dead-end valley, so there are no ways or very few cars and lots of walks and tracks. So if you look carefully, you can really disappear for a while and dive into nature.
Oh, that sounds lovely. So before we dive into the topic of today, which we're going to talk about the Cinque Terre, can you remind everyone, maybe give everyone a little bit of an introduction to yourself and who you are, what you do, and yeah, we would love to hear about you.
Thank you. Okay, my name is Enrica Monzani. I'm a Ligurian born and bred. So I was born in Genova and live in Genova in the last 47 years. I'm a home cook and cookbook author. I can say, gastronomical researcher. So I do researches in my region about food and products, local food and products, lost recipes, and so on. And I'm a food experience curator, so I organize food experiences for mainly for an international audience in Genova and in Liguria. So I organized food tours of Genova and Camogli, which is a tiny village close to Portofino. And then I organized cooking classes in Genova in my tiny vintage kitchen. Actually, the best format are the market to table cooking class. So we go to the market to do the shopping, then go home and cook and eat together on the terrace. And among these things, I'm a certified wine taster. And recently I became an extra virgin olive oil sommelier. And the word of the extra virgin olive oil, it's fantastic. So I really love it. And something I would love to dip into that. You can find me online as a small kitchen in Genoa. And that's my website where I share traditional recipes and food tips on Liguria in Italian and in English. Then I have also a Substack newsletter, Taste of Liguria, where I share my food adventures when I walk around Liguria in search of interesting food things to tell. And then lastly, I've published a cookbook on Ligurian cuisine, which is called Liguria in Cucina, The Flavors of Liguria, which is bilingual, Italian and English. And it's available in Europe and in the United States. You can find it on Amazon. So this is quickly who I am and what I do.
She's a very busy lady, everyone, and she's very accomplished. And what I love about you, Enrica, is you are a prodigious learner. You're always learning, trying to learn new things about your region. And this is a tiny little region of Italy. It's quite small, but there's so much more to know, and you just keep going and going and learning all different aspects of food and nature. And yeah, it's really fantastic. And I'm so glad I met you.
Thank you.
And she's a mum. It's all happening. All right, so let's get started. Let's talk about the Cinque Terre. And these are the beautiful villages that really capture everyone's imagination. And it's something maybe that we think of the Italian coast. We think of these villages perched on the cliffs. So I'm really curious to hear about those villages and that place from a local perspective. Can you remember the first time that you visited the Cinque Terre?
Yes. The first time I visited Cinque Terre, I was 20 years old, 22 maybe, probably. And I've been there with a friend of mine. We were two ladies, and we decided to take these weekends off. And we went to Cinque Terre by train. We stayed in Vernazza. So we slept in the Vernazza, which is one of the 5 villages. And then we walk from Vernazza, and the day after we walk from Vernazza to Monterosso with the famous renewed Via dell'Amore, which is the street that connects these two villages. That was magic because I really got impressed by these villages, as you said, perched on the mountains. Well, the villages are on the sea, of course, but then you have the cliffs just on your back, and they are very steep, and you have this wild nature in between one village and the other. They are amazing. Also for me, that I usually live in Liguria. I live in Liguria. I live in Genova. But it's a very special region also for those who lives very close by.
So when you went there for the first time, it's so interesting to me that you were 20. So it's not somewhere that people would go to visit, like, you know, as a family from Genoa. It's not a place that you would go.
No, this is not a place very common this is not a touristic place for the people who living in Genova.
Is it because maybe in Monterosso there's a beach, but maybe there's not so much of a beach or many places to relax along that coast? It's more about hiking and scenery and that type of thing.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And so how long did you stay? Do you remember how long you stayed on that trip?
This was just a weekend. Then I went there other times, and curiously, I just You let me think about that. I've always been there with friends rather than with my husband or my family. That was a kind of escape, a lady escape. Can you say that? For a couple of days in a wonderful, like paradise land. And it's so close. It's 1 hour from Genoa.
Yeah, it is. It's really close. So it's very easy to get to by train from Genoa, isn't it? It's just like straight down on that train line. So easy. This is what I love about Liguria. It's very easy to get around.
At least on the coast.
Yes.
It's quite different if you want to visit the inland.
Yeah.
Because there you need a car and you need to drive.
You do need a car, and the driving, it requires some skill. I never want to do it again. That's one place where I'm like, no, I am not driving there. But yeah, if we want to travel by train, and I know a lot of our listeners do, then it's a really beautiful region to do that. Okay, so when you were in the Cinque Terre, and I think people have got this beautiful vision of these beautiful cliffs, and there's five villages. I don't know how people are envisaging it if they've never been there, but they're very close together and you can get very close to them, but they've all got their unique character, don't they?
The special thing of this land is that it is a vertical land. The mountains just clinch and go down deeply, very steep on the sea. And so you have these villages which nowadays are connected by train. So you can move from one to the other in 30 seconds by train. 2 tunnels and you're there. But in the past, these villages were separated by high mountains. And so they were not connected. They were not, as we assume they are now, because now Cinque Terre is a brand which was made 30, 40 years ago to help marketing the area. But they have never considered themselves as a wall. So they always been separated from each other, and they have very different characteristics also. Each village has its characteristic. And it's amazing because you have this really wild nature in between one village and the other. A wild nature that has been tamed, can I say tamed by humans? Because you see all the terraces and the stone walls, which were made by man during the centuries to take something out of this very hard land. It's like, I would say it's like a mountainside on the sea. It's like Trentino on the sea. So it's a very green region, a very agricultural region. I think it is important to describe properly Cinque Terre as it is nowadays and how it was in the past.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting also how, yes, man or the humans have tamed the land there, but not in a destructive way. They've actually worked with nature to cultivate their food and the way that they live in a very conscious way that's symbiotic with nature. So they haven't gone in with a big bulldozer and knocked things down.
No, but the concepts of how the nature, the environment was tamed by man was very conscious because they organized the countryside in layers. So there is the woods on top, then there are the olive groves, and then closer to the sea, there are the vineyards. So there is a project in doing that, also according to altitude. And nowadays, people who live and work in the land, they preserve also the landscape. So they are the ones that keep the environment nice and they keep it alive. And so it's a land that has a symbiotic life with the man.
Yeah, it's. I think when people go there and maybe they go on a day trip and they're rushing through the villages, it's very hard to perhaps envision that this is part of a bigger ecosystem. And yeah, I think it's very important to stay overnight there because you can then appreciate the rhythm of life and how it goes with the seasons and how it goes with the day, the sunrise and the sunset. You can better appreciate that these are separate places with separate identities. Walking also, right? Because if you just travel by train or by boat, you think, oh, it's really, they're all very close to each other. But in fact, if you had to walk it, it would take some time.
But walking is very important because the tissue, the nets in between these lands is made by paths, by trails. And there are 130 kilometers of trails in the Cinque Terre Park. And so walking is essential. It was in the past for connecting the villages one with the other. And it's essential nowadays if you want to experience that area in the most authentic way. You have to walk on the hills. So if you want to discover Cinque Terre, you have to go up. And you have to wear a pair of sneakers or something even more proficient for walking. And then you have to hike.
And I mean, you don't need to be like a super hiker, but, you do need to be fairly fit, though.
No, because there are actually trails for any level. So there are rings that you can make. There are tougher trails, of course, but you can find any level of walking. And when you walk in Cinque Terre, especially because there is this altitude, this different levels, you can see different habitats and different landscapes. So you have the vineyards, and then you have the olive groves, and then you walk in the woods, and you always have the sea just below. So this is a very rich, they are always very rich walking because the landscapes are incredible and changing every 5 minutes. If I have to say what's the best way to visit Cinque Terre, walk.
Yeah. And I'm loving this conversation because I think when we think about the Cinque Terre, people want to go through each of the villages and maybe describe what they're all about. And they do all have their separate charms. And some of them, I think people think about what they look like, but I think it's really interesting to look at what their specialties are. So in some villages, they're more focused on wine and growing grapes, and in other villages, it's not as much of a focus, is it?
They have their own characteristic geographically and also historically. As to winemaking, I would say that it is something that you can find all over the 5 lands because this is part really of the landscape. Maybe there are some where you can see the vineyards more clinging on the sea, like in Manarola, for example, where you actually they harvest the grapes from the boats. So just to say how close the vineyards are on the sea. But this is something that is very common. But it is true. They all have their characteristic. For example, there is Monterosso. Monterosso is the first from Levanto to Tuscany, let's say. And Monterosso has a beach. It is the only one who has a beach. And so there are beach clubs, and it's more flat. And then from there, you can walk to the others, which are in tiny natural arbors. Then there is Corniglia, for example. Corniglia is not on the sea. It's on the mountainside. You can get there walking, hiking, or by car from above, but it's not on the seaside. And then there are also the others. So each of them has a special charm, and also different characteristic. For example, in the imaginary of people traveling to Cinque Terre, since Cinque Terre are villages on the sea, they thought the fishing is an activity. The people in Cinque Terre, the locals, are fishermen. This is completely false. This is not true. It's not true historically also, because people of the Cinque Terre were mainly peasants. They live with agriculture. So they used to enjoy the seafood like mussels, octopus, something that they can grab from the rocks. So they were not fishermen. Also, because the lands where they are tiny. But for Monterosso, they are tiny natural arbors where you cannot protect, you cannot give shelter to a big number of vessels, of boats. So you can keep few boats there. But if there are storms, they are dangerous. And indeed, the only village that develops some kind of fishing activity is Monterosso, because Monterosso has a beach where you can beach the boats when there is a storm. And Monterosso, as far as fishing, is renewed for fishing anchovies. They have this tradition of preserving anchovies under salt. But again, this was not the main activities of Monterosso as well. So most of the time, the fishermen of Monterosso were also peasants taking care of the vineyards in the back and going to fishing during the summertime, but not during the wintertime, or try to integrate their family earnings with some fishing, but there was also the countryside. So fishing, and still nowadays, fishing activity is probably 1% of the economy of Cinque Terre. There are 2 or 3 fishermen living with their fishing activities, which is very strange compared to what is the imaginary. So there are a couple in Monterosso, and then there is one fisherman in Corniglia, which is a friend of mine, Guido. Actually, he's not living on fishing just because he also has a tiny restaurant on the countryside where he sells the fish he have caught during the day, the night. And it is an ittiturismo because it is a place where, like agriturismo, where you eat the products of the countryside. Ittiturismo is where you eat the products of the fishermen, the catch of the day. And he's living thanks also to this side activity. So fishing, it's easy to market as one of the activities of Cinque Terre, but it is not the main activity.
I mean, it makes sense when you think about it because, as you say, the geography is not very hospitable to boats coming in and out, is it? It's very rocky and rough, and the seas get very rough in winter, don't they?
True. And also, Ligurian Sea, as I always say, is not a very catchy sea geographically. Ligurian Sea is not catchy. It's very, very, very deep. It's stormy. And so fishing has never been a main activity in all Ligurian coast, even less in Cinque Terre, where they have geographical barriers for this kind of activity.
Yeah, so interesting. And I love the concept that you described of people being farmers and being able to farm the mussels, the kotze from the rocks, and so they don't have to go out to sea. And of course, the kotze or the mussels are one of the famous dishes of the area, and
jointly with anchovies.
So tell us a bit more about the anchovies.
Jointly with mussels and octopus, we have the anchovies. So if you want to find a food that is traditional in Cinque Terre, if you find in restaurants anchovies, they are traditional. I don't know if they actually were catch in Cinque Terre because, as I said, there are very few fishermen, but the kind of food is still traditional.
Yeah, so then because we're all thinking of seafood, but it's not, the traditional obvious thing that they're doing there. So what are some of the other dishes that they eat that are more related to the land rather than the sea?
The products related to the land, which is not eating, but it's drinking, is wine. Because as you said, winemaking, you see it everywhere. And the winemaking were in the past the bones, the foundation of the traits or of the life of Cinque Terre. So winemaking is still an historical, traditional activity. And today they are trying to renew and keep on this activity. So they are opening new wineries. They are rescuing old vineyards. So there is a intense work of making wine again. And so that is one of the most really local products that you can find in Cinque Terre. And it is made by locals, which is important. So there are 30 wineries in Cinque Terre, 30 now. There are 2 big wineries. One is the social winery, where very tiny producers sell their grapes and they make wine. Then there is another big winery, Sassarini, which is a big producer. And then the rest are tiny, small producers that produce their wines. If you buy a bottle of wine from Cinque Terre and if you go to Cinque Terre and order local wine in the restaurants, you are really supporting the local activities and the local people. In addition to wines, another local products are lemons. You probably know lemons from Monterosso. There are some lemon orchards in the area, especially around Monterosso, which is flatter. And it is typical of their making limoncino, which is practically the same thing as limoncello. What we call it limoncino. So it's a spirit made with lemons and alcohol and sugar. There is a production of extra virgin olive oil with the varieties of Frantoio and Leccino, which are two olive varieties also very popular in Tuscany. They are not producing olive oil with Taggiasca olives, which are the olives that makes oil in the west part of Liguria. And the olive oil production is very small, but there are some producers and lots of people make their own oil for family consumption. So that is another thing that it is produced. And then there is the production of honey, for example. There are different producers because the honey of Cinque Terre is very good, especially what we call mille fiori, made with 1,000 flowers. And this honey is very good because of the different altitude that you can find in Cinque Terre. So the bees can suck flowers of different altitudes and of different spices and varieties. And so the honey that they make is complex and fragrant. And that is another product. Then the anchovies we have already commented. The mussels and octopus are two traditional products. They come from La Spezia nowadays, where they have a farming of mussels. And then there are octopus. Probably they come from the general market. I don't know if there are people who actually sell octopus for the restaurants there. So these are the products. And then there are in the past there were the green gardens on the terraces, and they live with vegetables and tiny farm animals. So that was the traditional way of eating in Cinque Terre.
Because you can't do mass production there. It's just impossible. So you have to have small producers, which is really lovely, actually, when you think about it. And you really will struggle to find any wines or products outside of the region. Even in Liguria, the production units are so small of the wine and olive oil. Does it stay normally in the region? Or
when there are such a small production, yes, they stay in the region. It's difficult to find elsewhere. Well, for the oil, no, there are big producers. For the wine, it's difficult to find them elsewhere in Italy or abroad. As far as Cinque Terre wine, you have to think that the production is 400,000 bottles a year, which is very few amount, and most of it is consumed locally, which is good because the winemakers produce it and they finish the bottles before the next harvesting. And therefore, if you go to Cinque Terre, you must visit the vineyards and do a tasting of local wine, because this is something you will not be able to taste elsewhere. So it's a unique experience, and the wines are of great quality.
And for the olive oil, do they have a local press in one of the villages, or do they have one in each village for the olive oil?
For sure, there is a local press where they convey all the olives. I don't know how many these are. Probably they are not located in the tiny villages on the coast, but probably they are in some village in the countryside. I don't know how many there are there. But usually what happens is that there is olive oil mill, and the producer convey their olives to the same mill, and they had their oil produced.
Yeah, I love this community spirit. They all get together and they make their wine together, and then they make their oil together, and it's very simple, isn't it? It's about surviving, really, isn't it? Like at its most basic, you need to have certain things to survive, and then the rhythm of life goes on about that survival. Spending time together and doing those activities together, but there's no rush to, what we think we're going to do when we go to the Cinque Terre, which is rush around the villages and take a heap of photos. But actually, if you take a step back and you look at what's actually happening around, there are actually people just living a life where they're making what they need and enjoying the beautiful scenery around them.
It's true. For the few locals still living in the Cinque Terre, it's like this. Because we have also to say that there are few hundreds of people living in these 5 villages. If they are not winemakers, most of them work in the tourist industry.
Yeah, that's true.
So they have restaurants, or they have Airbnb, they have boats, they give services, bars. So they work in the tourism industry, and because it is to say, the main source of income of that region.
So how would they maintain the character of their sense of identity? Because I know it's super important for Italians, that sense of place.
It is super important. And before we had this interview, I interviewed myself, a couple of friends living in Cinque Terre, because I do not live in Cinque Terre, but I want the opinion of the people who live there every day, all year long, in those villages. And what came out from talking to them is that their sense of identity is getting harder and harder with the increase of this mass tourism, because they feel like they are kind of disappearing. Also, their identity and traditions, because unfortunately, the tourism nowadays, these days, is a mass tourism of people that just stay one day, and they are not really interested in how people live, what are the traditions, what's the real country is, because as I said, the Cinque Terre are the countryside, not just the tiny villages. And so they are they have an urgency of sticking to their tradition and staying together and keeping an identity. This is something that they try to do. How? Well, they try to organize things together. So the institutions are not very useful for this purpose. So there are some activities or things that people organize, people living in the countries, in the villages, organize by themselves. For example, they organize in Manarola. My friend Yvonne, she's a sommelier, and she has a bar in Manarola. And she said that in Manarola, during summertime, they organize a soccer tournament on the church square, where just locals can participate, and they love doing that. Then they organize also during summertime the so-called White Night, where they have this party, everyone dressed in white, and just the locals are invited to take part of this party. And in Manarola, there are 200 people living there. And that in the last party, there were 180 people participating. So almost all the village was taking part to that party. And also, for example, in Manarola, they have the patron saint is San Lawrence, and they have a procession. And in the past, it was something organized by the authorities, just sometimes also for the marketing purpose. In the last 3-4 years, there were young people of around 30 years old that decided to make the procession like in old days. And so they have this statue of St. Lawrence loaded on a boat, and the boat sailing on the sea at night with all the candles, and they play music and they read poems. But this is something that the local people do for themselves. This is not a show. This is something that they do for themselves because they really need to stick to their traditions. And for example, there's another friend of mine, Guido, the fisherman I told you, one of the few survived fishermen. He's in Corniglia, and his family, they are 10. He gives work to 10 people always in the fishing and tourism industry. And they take care of the community with the public assistance, and they try to organize sport activities for the kids. And he is also considering to open a public oven. So his idea is to open a public food oven, as it was in the past, because in the past it was like that. But the meaning is we do bread together. We just gather, bake bread, have a sip of wine, and stay together once a week, which is something that people do for needs in the past. But he wants to do that because the needing is not eating, the needing is making community. And they really feel this need of being a community and be proud of who they are. And there are indeed young people coming back and decide to stay in Cinque Terre and take care of the villages, of the countryside, of the vineyards. If I have to give an advice to people who go to Cinque Terre, which is actually an advice that I received from my friends I interviewed in the last days, it is to connect with locals. If you travel to Cinque Terre, connect with locals. Make questions. Be curious. Try to know how they live, what they do, what are the traditions, because they are proud of their tradition. And if you get them involved, they are happy of sharing rather than just being in a picture, in an Instagram picture, So make it more human, the contact with the people and with the locals. That's extremely important.
Yeah, I think it's so important, and you know that I think that's important. And I noticed as well when I was last there, and we stayed in Levanto, which is the next village along from Monterosso. It's not part of the Cinque Terre as such, but when you do make the effort to go and speak to people, they're so excited to tell you about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And I think this is a great example of how when people come together and they want to do something together and spend time together and make something better, you don't need to wait for a government to do it for you or anything. And it's probably, if you do, it's probably not going to happen. Like, this conversation is very interesting to me because earlier this year, I interviewed a journalist from CNN who made a report on what's happening in Venice. And again, it's the people that have just said, we need to take things into our own hands. We need to come together to fix this problem that we have, this, disconnection or this over-tourism, and just try and find a way to come together to make it a better life for themselves and for the area that they live in. I think it's a great example, actually. It's inspiring because if you can do that, literally millions of tourists go to that area every year, and especially in it's really peak season now from April to end of October, right?
Well, the peak season are July and August. June, July and August, they are peak season, and you have lots of people, especially huge groups from the cruise ships or from the buses who go mainly in the villages rather than in the countryside.
It's very busy. But, because those villages are so small, it feels busy at any time of year, really. If there's, unless it's midwinter, I feel like it feels busy. So, okay. Well, Enrica, thank you for taking us a little trip to the Cinque Terre. It is such a beautiful region, and I think it's even more special when you learn about the traditions and the culture and how people live in that area.
So my suggestion is study before going to Cinque Terre. Trust the locals. Visit Cinque Terre from the countryside, or also from the boat. If you find a local boat service, and you have some locals who introduce to you the lands from the seaside, also that is a very nice way of understanding the geography and the story, and drink wine.
That's easy. Now, Enrica, if our listeners would like to explore more of Liguria, how can they stay in contact with you?
Okay, they can stay in contact with me with my newsletter, Taste of Liguria. They can find it on Substack, and they can visit my website, asmallkitcheningenoa.com, and they find all the details of what I do, what I write, and how to get in contact with me. So
you can come on tour with us next year because Enrica is going to take us around the Cinque Terre together, and we're very excited about that. We've only got a few spots left on that trip, actually, so it's proving to be very popular. So if you're interested, get in touch and we will make sure we get you on the list. Exciting. So we have some guests that are going back for their second time to Liguria because they love it so much. And as most of our listeners know, I do really, really, really love Liguria. It's such an interesting, and I will say it's an untold region outside of the Cinque Terre. Not many people know this area. And I would say if you are in Genoa, or very, very highly recommend Camogli, because that is an absolutely wonderful town that you should definitely look up Enrica because she'll take you on a lovely trip around the best eateries. And Olivia and I had the pleasure of doing that a few years ago, and it was a great afternoon or morning, wasn't it? Yeah, I still think about that, and I still tell people about that amazing shop you took us to. She took us to quite a few amazing shops, but there is a few that I really loved. Anyway, it was a wonderful morning, and I had a great time. So, grazie, Enrica. Thank you for coming on Untold Italy again, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
It was a pleasure to me. Grazie, Katy. Ciao.
Ciao. What a treat to see the Cinque Terre through Enrica's eyes. Her passion for Liguria and dedication to offering a unique perspective and keeping local traditions alive is something that I truly admire. I always learn so much from chatting with her, and I hope this conversation gave you a whole new way of looking at the Cinque Terre, well beyond the gorgeous photos. Like Enrica said, if you take the time to connect with locals and slow down to appreciate the rhythm of life, you'll be rewarded with a completely different travel experience, one that's full of discovery, including local wines, stories, olive oil, and maybe even a taste of that honey she mentioned. We work with Enrica closely when creating our Cinque Terre and Beyond tour. It's so important to us that we engage locals like her to bring you an experience that delivers you an insight into the beating heart of every place that we visit. One of our favourite guests, Carolyn, who's been on 5 trips with us already, has said something to me in June that I probably don't mention enough here, but it's important to note that our tour experiences take you to the iconic places that you see online in a different and unexpected way, avoiding the crowds and getting to the heart of what really makes them special, the culture, food, wine and people that live there. If you're interested in exploring more, you can stay in touch with Enrica via her website, A Small Kitchen in Genoa, and her Taste of Liguria newsletter on Substack. And if you want to join us for next year's Cinque Terre tour with Enrica, check out all the details on our site. Spots are filling fast, actually, so you want to be quick. Of course, as always, you can find all the places and helpful tips that Enrica shared, plus links to her cookbook and newsletter in the show notes at untolditaly.com/292 for episode number 292. Grazie mille. Thanks to our wonderful listeners for your ongoing support of Untold Italy. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, then it would be amazing if you gave us a rating or review in your favourite podcast app, like Spotify, where we're nearly up to 500, I think, which is exciting. Otherwise, you might decide to support us by downloading our app and upgrading to the premium ad-free version, where you'll find our podcast episodes ad-free and our curated travel guides for places across Italy. On next week's episode, we're taking you to another magical corner of the country, but until then, it's ciao for now. The Untold Italy podcast is an independent production. Podcast editing, audio production and website development by Mark Hatter, production assistance and content writing by the other Katy Clarke. Yes, there are 2 of us. For more information about Untold Italy, please visit untolditaly.com.